Hi, my name is Robin Wong. I'm a photographer based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and this is the world's smallest mirrorless lens with autofocus. This is the Viltrox 28 f4.5. But is it any good? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Let's do this! As usual, before we start, here's some important disclaimers. Viltrox sent me this lens, the 28 f4.5 for Nikon Z full-frame mirrorless cameras, and I do get to keep this lens after making this video. However, I made it very clear to Viltrox from the start that they have no control whatsoever on what I want to say in this video. This is not exactly a review of this lens. This is not exactly a new lens. The Sony version of this Viltrox 28 f4.5 was already released more than 1 year ago, so there are many reviews available out there about this lens already. I don't think I have anything new to add to this lens, but what I want to share is what I like and dislike about this lens and how it works for my street photography. Before we dive in too far, let's take a look at some sample images I've taken with this lens on my Nikon Z5. After shooting extensively with this Viltrox 28 f4.5 on my own Nikon Z5, I gotta say, there are many things that I really like about this lens. Number one, I just love how tiny this lens is. In fact, this is the smallest mirrorless camera lens out there with autofocus. If you compare this lens against Nikon's own 28 f2.8, this lens is just so much smaller, it's slimmer, thinner, but I know it's not fair, f2.8 versus f4.5, but you gotta admit, there's an appeal of using something so tiny. In fact, it is even smaller than most Micro Four Thirds lenses out there, and that is saying something. I know that the world's smallest lens with autofocus belongs to Pentax 40 f2.8, but that is a DSLR lens. If you attach that on a mirrorless camera, you will need an adapter which will increase the bulk of the overall combination. So still technically for mirrorless systems, this Viltrox 28 f4.5 is the tiniest, and there's just something so magical, so enjoyable using something so small, and yet it can deliver fantastic results. Reason number two why I love this Viltrox 28 f4.5 is autofocus. Most other lenses that's made to be so small with body cap or pancake slim design, they'll have some compromises, usually they skip autofocus. I'm just glad that somehow Viltrox managed to squeeze in autofocus in this tiny lens. Using it on my Nikon Z5, so far the experience has been very positive. Autofocus was fast, reliable, it's always accurate, no issue whatsoever. Reason number three, this is a really sharp lens. Viltrox claims the use of 6 elements in 6 groups optical construction. They also claim the use of some special glasses, namely 2 extra low dispersion lenses and 2 spherical lenses. Looking at the images came out from this lens, I'm very satisfied with the sharpness. The lens manages to capture sharp results and manages to resolve plenty of fine details, but the contrast is okay. The contrast is quite good, but it's not excellent. I've seen better contrast from other lenses, but it's not fair to compare. This is not a pro-grade lens. This is a cheap lens, but for what it is, the sharpness you manage to squeeze out from this lens is actually very, very good. Reason number 4. Generally, this lens manages lens flaws very well. There are some issues there and here, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but looking at the images, generally I'm quite happy with what this lens can do. I don't see any distortion. I think this is due to software correction. I don't care. As long as the straight lines remain perfectly straight, I'm happy. I also don't see any traces of chromatic aberration when I shoot against strong sources of light or against high contrast areas. Generally, I didn't see any purple fringing or color fringing, maybe because this is an f4.5 lens. It is not like f1.4, f1.8, generally where you get the purple fringing or chromatic aberration. And they also use 2 extra low dispersion lenses to combat any color fringing. Corner performance is surprisingly good. They are not excellent. Of course, the corners are a little bit soft compared to the center of the frame, but they are still very, very decent, and that's quite surprising for a tiny lens like this. Reason number 5. I love that this Viltrox 28 f4.5 has built-in lens cover, and it makes perfect sense. For such a tiny lens, it's designed for convenience, right? But having a lens cap that you have to put on and take it off is just a little bit cumbersome. So it makes sense that you just have it built into the lens itself. All you have to do is just slide it on and off. It just makes life a little bit easier. Reason number 6. This lens is really cheap. It's only going for $99 US, and this is a wide-angle full-frame lens. It has f4.5 aperture, which is still decent if you shoot under bright sunlight, and it has autofocus. It's meant to be so tiny. It still can deliver sharp results. I think $99 for this lens is a steal. And finally, my last reason, number 7, why I love this Viltrox 28 f4.5 is the fun factor. I enjoy using this lens for my street photography tremendously. And honestly, of all the reasons, this could be the most important. Before we jump and say, oh, this Viltrox 28 f4.5 is like the perfect cheap lens, there are some things you have to be aware of about this lens. This lens is 28 f4.5 and the f4.5 aperture is fixed, meaning that you cannot go wider, you cannot go narrower, you cannot stop down to f5.6, f8, f11. It is stuck at f4.5 permanently. Usually it's not a big issue, but sometimes if you're shooting in a close-up situation where you want more depth of field, you want more subject in focus, that's where situations can get a little bit complicated. This fixed aperture f4.5 can be quite limiting. Now, that out of the way, let's talk about the things that I dislike about this Viltrox 28 f4.5. Number 1, vignetting. Now, obviously, when the lens is designed to be so tiny, there are some compromises, and the one that stood out the most was heavy vignetting. No matter how you shoot, no matter where you point the lens to, you will see the corners to have a little bit darker shade, and it is very, very obvious. Number 2, what I don't like about this Viltrox 28 f4.5 is flare. This lens is very sensitive to flare if you shoot against strong sources of light. You have haze, you have some blobs of light on your images, and this can be quite destructive, it can be distracting, and they cannot be easily fixed in post-processing. Number 3, Starburst effect. This lens can render some interesting, unique looking starburst or sun stars, which is a little bit dominant. It just spreads across the entire frame. I think that's a little bit excessive. I usually want my starburst to be a little bit more subtle, not so dominant, right? And finally, reason number 4, why I dislike this Viltrox 28 f4.5 is lack of 3D pop. Don't get me wrong, this lens is perfectly capable of rendering sharp images. I have no issue with sharpness, and the contrast is decent. I've said this already, but the contrast is not as good as other lenses that I've seen from this Nikon Z system. But somehow the images look a little bit dull. The images look flat and uninteresting. It's just lacking depth. There's no realistic look to the images, and I miss the 3D pop that I see rendered by other lenses that I've used on this Nikon Z5. In all honesty, all things considered, all the things that I've complained about this Viltrox 28 f4.5, none of them are deal breakers. This is not a perfect lens. It is a cheap budget lens. Of course, there'll be some compromises, but because it is so cheap, it is only $99 US. It's made to be so tiny. And I gotta say, it's impressive what this lens can do. So most of the flaws, most of the issues, they can be easily forgiven. I still think this is a fantastic lens. It is so tiny, there's just something so fun shooting with something so small, and yet you get some really good results. That's all I have to share about this Viltrox 28 f4.5, why I love that it is so tiny, so cheap, and yet it is a capable lens, and why I love using it for my street photography. If you are looking for a cheap lens just to toy around with, if you're shooting with wide angle 28mm for your street photography, definitely this Viltrox 28 f4.5 is worth considering. Do you agree with my thoughts? Please share your opinion in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. If you found my sharing beneficial, if you've enjoyed looking at my photographs, please consider buying me a cup of coffee, or you can contribute directly to my PayPal, or you can join as a member on this channel. All links in the description below on how you can do them, and any support will go a long way. It will definitely help me to continue making more content. Until the next one, please go out and take more photographs. Bye-bye!